Hey guys, welcome back to another video, and in today's video I'm going to be giving my ranking of all the races so far this season. So hey, like and subscribe and let's get into it. So in 12th position I have the Monaco Grand Prix, and well, realistically it just wasn't that good. We got really teased with the rain, thinking it could spruce something up. But like Monaco these days, the cars are too big. There wasn't that many overtakes. And I think the only good thing about that race was actually Ocon getting P3. But yeah, not a very good race. Now onto 11th. This one is going to be so hard for me to say, but I've actually put Silverstone. Now hear me out. As a McLaren fan, I'd love to put this first place because this is actually probably one of my favourite races. But being realistic, nothing actually happened in that race before the safety car. Nothing at all. Magnussen's engine blowing up was the first thing that happened. And then after that, yes, Norris and Hamilton had a good fight. But apart from that, that was it. So I can't put it any higher. It really actually wasn't that good of a race. Then on to number 10. And I have the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Now, for me, personally, it was just because this race could have been so much better. We've seen in past years how good this race can be. So it was just such a letdown. And Alonso was leading the first few laps, but after he got overtaken by Perez, it was just game over. And then the safety car came out because Stroll DNF'd, which actually screwed over his teammate Alonso because then Verstappen overtook him. There wasn't much at the front racing, so it wasn't that interesting. The Mercedes and the Ferraris were actually putting on a good show, but that's about it. So I would put them no higher than 10th. And in the 9th, I have Azerbaijan. Purely because, again, like Jeddah, it could have been so much better and had so much potential, but just nothing happened. Nick De Vries crashed out by crashing himself out. And the only not normal thing was Perez winning. But that was about it. There was a few overtakes around the field, but it was your same generic top 10. There wasn't any crazy masterclasses from like Albon, Hulkenberg, Norris, or anyone like that. So I can't really put that race any higher than 9th. Then continuing from 8th, it was actually really hard, I think, from 8th to 2nd to put my list, because I think all of these races were pretty similar level, and most of them followed the same formula. But funnily enough, my first one did not do that, and that was the Belgium Grand Prix. Now, the Belgium sprint race was good, but I'm not talking about sprint races in this video, just purely races alone. And of course, with Verstappen having a grid penalty, it meant Leclerc started first. Then we had Sainz and Piastri crashing into each other, basically ending both of their races. Norris just dropping back and back in the grid because that McLaren was set up for a wet race. And again, like my problem with Monaco, we were teased with a little bit of rain, but it just didn't rain for enough. And of course, in Belgium, you don't want too much rain. But it looked like if it kept up that amount of rain for a few more laps, maybe people would have had to put on inters. Then it would have maybe spruced up the race a little bit. But again, nothing crazy happened in that race, with no battles for the podium positions and not many memorable overtakes. Then on to 7th, again, another race where Verstappen started lower was the Miami Grand Prix. Again, this race was pretty good and it followed the formula of one of the Red Bulls charging up the field, the other Red Bull running away with it. Well, technically, he didn't run away with it until Verstappen got him. But the thing that changed for the Miami Grand Prix was Magnussen. Magnussen was amazing to watch, and it was great to see Gasly do well as well. But Magnussen kept the Ferrari of Leclerc behind him for 38 laps, and it was such a great race to watch purely because of that. There was so much action just because of those two racing. Without them, it would have been a pretty dull race. But because of that, I've had to put them 7th. Then onto the 6th position for races, and I put Spain. Again, a very decent race. Not too much going on at the front again, which is sad. But the reason this race was great, because it had a lot of memorable moments, such as Hulkenberg, Gasly, Tsunoda and Zhou all fighting for places. And it was a great battle to watch. Tsunoda and Zhou were also battling throughout the whole race, which was great. Again, one of the Red Bulls, Perez, coming up the field, which was also great to see because it led to overtakes. And, of course, Alonso charging his way up the field after pitting. There was a lot of overtakes, and there was a lot to watch during the race. And, again, for the opposite reason, I think because people come into Spain thinking it's going to be a boring race, I know they changed the layout this year, it actually helped it out because people had their expectations lower, and it actually delivered a pretty decent race. Then up next was Canada in 5th. And, again, the reason this race was so good was another defensive masterclass from Albon, securing 7th for Williams. it was such a great race to watch. It went down to the wire between Bottas, Stroll, Norris and Ocon. It was such a great race to watch to the end. Of course, Verstappen ran away with it, with Perez again having to climb the field after having a worse quali. But because of people such as Hulkenberg and Albon having good qualifying, it meant the race was pretty good. Hulkenberg also had a train of his own, but the Haas's race pace was just too bad and he dropped off. But a lot of trains, which normally is boring, but it kept you interested because there was actually quite a few overtakes going on. Then onto the top 4. For me, I put the Austrian Grand Prix. Again, McLaren brought upgrades, but I'll try to be not biased about this. But this had the same formula. Perez charging his way through the field, giving us lots of entertainment to watch. The battle for the top 3 was insane as well, purely because everyone was getting time penalties for track limits, which made it really interesting to watch. Like Hamilton got track limits, Sainz got track limits, loads of other drivers got track limits, and there was also investigations after the race into the track limits. So it really was great to watch, with also Albon again putting in a masterclass defensively. Sadly, it wasn't enough this time to secure him any points, but again, it put on a good show for us at home. And also, technically, there was a battle for the lead, but it really didn't last that long. Leclerc got overtaken on the first straight, but technically it was, so I'll take that into consideration as well. Moving on to 3rd, and I have the Bahrain Grand Prix. Now for me, it's a bit because it was the first race of the season, and obviously everyone's hyped for the first race of the season, but also it did show that Aston actually had some pace. The Astons and the Mercedes fighting all race long was great to watch. Also, the Ferraris were fighting with the Red Bulls for a little bit, but obviously Leclerc DNF'd. So it was a great race for overtakes and was interesting for the podium for quite a bit of the race between Alonso and Sainz. And that's what made this race so great, because there was a couple of battles that were like that. Now on to the second best race of the season for me, which would be the Hungarian Grand Prix. Now this race had carnage, battles, basically everything you would want. And again, considering it was Hungary, people lower their expectations going into a race where there's less places to overtake, and it delivered. With lap 1 collisions between both Alpines and Alfa Romeos getting tangled up, it was a great first lap, with Hamilton dropping from 1st to 4th as well, with both McLarens going up into the podium positions. It was a great race for the podium positions as well, which is the main thing that makes races the most interesting. And the battle between the McLarens, Hamilton, and the charging Red Bull of Perez was so great to watch. So for me, Hungary goes 2nd place. And now, for the best race of the season so far, I think we all saw it coming, was definitely the Australian Grand Prix. Now this had everything the Hungarian race had to offer, but times it by about 1 million in carnage mode. Of course, you had Perez again starting from the back in the pits. You had Russell going into the lead on the first lap. You had also Verstappen, Hamilton, and I think Leclerc in the Ferrari all battling into the second corner. And then Sainz bottled it into the gravel. And then, of course, a few laps later, Albon crashed out of the race. He bottled it, causing a red flag to come out. And for this restart, it was okay. But of course, that wasn't the only restart of the race, with Russell's engine blowing up and Magnussen's tyre blowing up, leading to another red flag situation. And this restart was carnage, with Alonso being spun out, Perez being pushed wide into the gravel, Sargent and Nick De Vries crashing into each other, both Alpines coming together again. Well, technically it wasn't again, because this was the first time it happened before Hungary. But in this list, again, you also had one of the Astons going straight into the gravel trap where Sainz went before. It was such a bad start for everyone. They basically reordered the grid, and because it was only a few laps till the end of the race, they just went to the finish line. So for me, that was the best race so far. Just so much was happening in that race. Such a great race to watch. But hey, everyone, put down in the comments down below what you think was the best race of the season, what you think the worst race of the season is, and hey, I'll see you all on the weekend. Bye bye.